Good morning and welcome to the Community Assessment and Services Center, better known as the CASC. Today's event is intended to focus on our efforts specific to the city's firearm compliance and safety initiative. This initiative is a collaborative effort to ensure the removal of illegal guns from our communities by requiring the prohibited person's relinquishment of their firearms upon conviction. The Adult Probation Department plays a critical role in this process, as outlined in new responsibilities defined in Proposition 63, the Safety for All Act. These new responsibilities, coupled with the Sheriff's Department work in actively recovering firearms from restrained persons, is at the very core of the work that we do to promote public safety. Many thanks is extended to those individuals who have joined us this morning and for their continued support to keep our community safe from gun violence. Specifically, Mayor Mark Farrell, Supervisor Catherine Stephanie, Supervisor Jeff Sheehy, Chief Farino from the Sheriff's Department representing Sheriff Vicki Hennessy, Chief Bill Scott from the San Francisco Police Department, Beverly Upton and the San Francisco Domestic Violence Consortium, and Dr. Emily Marassi, Director of the Department on the Status of Women. It is truly my distinct privilege to introduce Mayor Mark Farrell, who has been a long-time advocate for gun control and safety. As District 2 Supervisor, Mr. Farrell introduced an anti-gun ordinance in 2015, which was subsequently approved by the Board of Supervisors. This gun control package was intended to fill gaps that existed in federal, state, and local regulatory oversight of firearms dealers and ammunition sales. This included requiring the videotaping of all gun and ammunition sales within San Francisco and required the regular storage and electronic transmission of ammunition sales data to the San Francisco Police Department. As District 2 Supervisor, Mr. Farrell introduced a safe gun storage and trigger lock law approved by the Board of Supervisors in 2016. This mandated that all firearms in San Francisco residences be kept in a locked container or be disabled by a trigger lock approved by the California Department of Justice. As District 2 Supervisor, Mr. Farrell announced his intention to introduce a gun restriction law after the Crissy Field rally in 2017. As you recall, an alt-right group, Patriot Prayer, requested a permit to hold a rally in Crissy Field. There was a citywide response to prevent the rally from becoming violent against the anti-immigrant national rhetoric. Ultimately, the group withdrew from holding the rally in Crissy Field, citing safety concerns for their own members. As you can see, our mayor of San Francisco has been a true advocate of gun safety and gun control. Please join me in welcoming Mayor Mark Farrell.
Thank you. Thank you, Chief Fletcher, and I want to thank you for all of your hard work and proud to be here today with you. I do want to thank our police department, and Chief, thank you for being here, our Sheriff's Department, thank you for coming, as well as Supervisors Stephanie and Sheehy, who have been leaders on this issue as well, along with Beverly Upton, of course, and Dr. Marassi. It's an honor to be here. You know, recent events across our country, unfortunately, have brought gun reform and gun control questions back to the forefront. Our country did not learn from Columbine, and unfortunately did not learn from Sandy Hook, and we are now faced with yet another mass shooting in one of our schools in the Parkland shooting in Florida just a few weeks ago. As Congress continues to stick its head in the sand on this issue, it is up to state and local governments to counteract and to do everything that we can locally to protect the sanctity of life for our residents, and we are doing that right here in San Francisco. I was honored last week to join the walkout at Ruth Asawa School, along with Supervisor Sheehy, which is in District 8, with the high school students there at 10 a.m., and I know schools across our country and right across the entire city of San Francisco were participating in these walkouts. Very proud of our students and our local leaders here in San Francisco for all of the efforts that they did in terms of walking out and demonstrating their own First Amendment rights, but also the voice of the next generation. We talked a lot about this last year. This is a fight that doesn't end today or tomorrow. This is going to be the next generation of Americans and of San Franciscans that will carry this issue forward and that will actually be able to make a difference in our country. And so inspiring to be there at the high school last week and watching students in Israel walk out of their classrooms, watching students in Iceland walking out of their classrooms in solidarity with the youth of the United States of America. We are not alone in this fight, and for once last week, instead of fighting against DC, which we do constantly in San Francisco, we were fighting with generations of young children across the entire globe, and it was incredibly inspirational. Unfortunately, the NRA continues, however, to dominate politics in Washington, D.C., and as Chief Fletcher kindly mentioned, as a supervisor, thanks to the leadership and prodding of my legislative aide, now Supervisor Catherine Stephanie, we worked on a number of gun control laws in San Francisco during my time. Chief among them, a law that then forced the last gun store in San Francisco to leave our city limits and to shut down. And as I was trending on Twitter with the NRA because of all the hatred that they were spewing towards us in San Francisco, towards me personally as a legislator, we told people in the community in San Francisco we would rather see a preschool or a grocery store there as opposed to a gun store. That's what we need more of here in San Francisco. And very proud to have seen that go through. And then to see Lieutenant Governor Gavin Newsom and his heroic efforts with Prop 63 at the state level. Huge credit to Lieutenant Governor Newsom for his efforts and his bold leadership on so many issues, not only here in San Francisco, but across our state, specifically around gun control. And Prop 63 did so much to move that dialogue forward. Chief among the parts of Prop 63 and what we're here today to talk about and to announce is the ability for local law enforcement personnel, for our sheriff's department, for our adult probation department, to confiscate more guns from the streets of San Francisco, more guns from the homes of those that have committed felonies and violent misdemeanors. We want less guns on our street. We want less guns in our homes here in San Francisco. It is safety first for San Francisco residents. We will never pander to the NRA here in San Francisco. Guns do not belong on our streets in San Francisco. And I am proud to be here today, along with Chief Fletcher, because since Prop 63 was enacted on January 1st of this year, our adult probation department has done heroic efforts working, and their caseload has skyrocketed through the roof in the ability to confiscate firearms from homes here in San Francisco, firearms that we do not want to appear on our streets. We do not want them in the hands of San Francisco residents. And because of the work that they have been doing, and because of what we are seeing into the future, today we are announcing that we are funding in this upcoming budget close to $1 million of new funding for our adult probation department alone to make sure that they have the staffing that they need. Over 5 individuals will be hired to make sure that they have the caseload and the staffing to meet the caseload that they need, because these people are going to be working full-time to get guns off the streets of San Francisco. I cannot think of a better priority in our upcoming budget than that. So I want to thank, again, everyone for being here today. I want in particular, again, thank Chief Fletcher for her leadership on this issue. This is something that everyone behind me supports. This is something the entire city of San Francisco supports. And as mayor of San Francisco, this is something I will never forget and we will always prioritize in our city government. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Mayor Farrell. It is a tremendous amount of dedication and support you have committed to this effort, and we thank you very much. And on behalf of the residents of San Francisco, I know each of them feels safer with having you committed to such an effort. Thank you. It is now my pleasure to introduce Supervisor Catherine Stephanie. Supervisor Stephanie is an ardent advocate for gun control, as demonstrated by her leadership of the local chapter of Moms Demand Action for Gun Sense in America. Supervisor Stephanie is familiar with District 2 and all of their concerns, as she worked as an aide to both Michaela Alioto and now Mayor Farrell for 9 years when they each served as the District 2 supervisor. It's quite an effort. In February 2018, Supervisor Stephanie introduced an ordinance to amend the police code to prohibit firearms at certain public gatherings. Again, another strong supporter of the efforts of gun control and gun safety. Please join me in welcoming Supervisor Stephanie.
Thank you, Chief Fletcher. First, I want to thank Mayor Farrell for committing to the funding to making sure we comply with Proposition 63 passed in 2016, a clear mandate from California voters that they wanted to keep weapons out of the hands of felons and to make sure that after they are convicted, their weapons are actually confiscated. It is not by accident that this proposition passed. As a gun violence prevention activist for nearly 2 decades, I have seen support for common sense gun reform continue to grow as we are inundated with devastating stories and gruesome scenes of gun violence every day in this country. More than 90 Americans are shot and killed, and hundreds more are injured every single day in America. Our gun homicide rate is 25 times higher than that of other developed nations, making this a uniquely American crisis. I also want to mention, in light of the fact that we are celebrating Women's History Month at the Board of Supervisors today, that gun violence disproportionately affects women, who are 16 times more likely to be shot and killed in America than women in peer nations. In an average month, 50 women are shot to death by a current or former partner. Approximately 4.5 million American women have been threatened with guns, and guns are the weapon of choice in domestic violence murders. Women are also the vast majority of mass shooting victims, which more often than not involve domestic violence. And as a mother, and I know I speak for millions of other mothers, we are tired of sending our children to school to participate in lockdown drills, preparing for mass shootings, and wondering if our children's school could be next. There was a school shooting today at a high school in Maryland. One is dead, one is in critical condition, a woman, and another has serious injuries. It is time to stop this madness, and I praise the students who walked out last week on Wednesday. I went into that crowd and I told them, thank you. You are the next generation. You are going to help us solve this. I was so moved last week by their activism, and I know they are going to be the force that helps change and turn the tide on this horrible epidemic in our country. Proposition 63 will make California the first state in the nation to require all prohibited criminal offenders to provide proof that they sold or transferred their firearms after their conviction. And I want to really thank Lieutenant Governor Gavin Newsom for everything he did to make sure this proposition passed. I'd also like to thank Chief Fletcher for doing everything you can beginning January 1st to make sure that we and your team were seeing that San Francisco is following the law and removing illegal guns from dangerous individuals. I also want to thank the efforts of the Department of the Status of Women, Dr. Marassi, and our Family Violence Council, led by Beverly Upton, who I've worked with for many years, for their important work on this issue, and Chief Scott and our Sheriff's Department with Sheriff Hennessy. We cannot do this work without all our partners. I am so proud to join Mayor Farrell today and my colleagues up here in supporting additional funding to make certain that San Francisco is removing guns from violent offenders and following the letter of the law. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Stephanie. We are pleased to have with us today Supervisor Jeff Sheehy. Supervisor Sheehy was appointed by Mayor Lee in 2017 and serves as the chair of the Public Safety and Neighborhood Services Committee. 20 years ago, Mr. Sheehy helped create and defend San Francisco's historic Equal Benefits Ordinance, making San Francisco the first city in the country to require employers with city contracts to offer equal benefits to the domestic partners of their employees. Supervisor Sheehy recently sponsored a resolution declaring support for the March 24th, 2018 March for Our Lives, for common sense gun reform and commended the students in San Francisco and around the nation for leading a movement to demand common sense gun laws and school safety measures. Please help me welcome Supervisor Sheehy to the podium.
Thank you, Chief Fletcher. The movement by the kids has really been inspiring. My 13-year-old daughter at her middle school, public middle school here, her whole class, her whole school participated. To see this next generation take the baton and show leadership in fighting against this scourge of guns is something that I am so proud to see. What I also find very interesting is, having watched the kids from Florida, is they're insistent on not being co-opted by politicians like myself, and their insistence on really driving the movement themselves, and for our nation. I'm particularly focused on this today on the issue of domestic violence. I actually, I think maybe alone amongst the supervisors, actually worked in 850 Bryant. So I work for the district attorney as a victim advocate for victims of domestic violence. And I think in almost no other setting is it more important to get weapons out of the hands of the people who are committing the crimes. I know from my experience that the vulnerability of women, the intense fight to escape the power and control of the men who are abusing them, it is a huge challenge. And the irrationality that surrounds the perpetrators, their intense focus on maintaining power and control, even if they have to, even to the point of killing their victims, killing the family of their victims. I think, and it's one of the most dangerous situations, I believe, for a police officer to be put into, is walking into a domestic violence situation. It disproportionate number of murders happen to victims of domestic violence. And so I really want to salute the effort to get the funding to make sure that no guns remain in the hands of, I can't get that word out, of people who commit domestic violence. So again, I want to thank the city family for this initiative. Thank you, Mayor Farrell, for your tremendous leadership, and it's an honor to be here. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your support, Supervisor Sheehy. It is now my pleasure to introduce Beverly Upton. Ms. Upton serves as the Executive Director of San Francisco's Domestic Violence Consortium, a 7-member panel of domestic violence organizations and their supporters committed to the effective delivery of services and public policy. Ms. Upton has actively supported individuals who have lost loved ones to domestic violence through court hearings and regularly attending community events to promote domestic violence awareness. Ms. Upton and the Department on the Status of Women have worked closely with the Sheriff's Department and the Adult Probation Department to identify those operational crossovers regarding this initiative so that we can work together to collaborate to keep these guns off our streets. Please join me in welcoming Beverly Upton.
Thank you, Chief. Thank you, Mayor Farrell. Thank you to Dr. Marase for her leadership and everybody who's with us today. I am also proud to be one of the tri-chairs of San Francisco's Family Violence Council. And our latest report shows that domestic violence threats with weapons are up 50% in San Francisco. We have to stop this trend, and this will help us. This weekend alone, the Thousand Oaks Mall shooting started with a domestic violence incident. The Parkland shooter was set off by a relationship that ended poorly. Who knows what's got the young man that shot today at his high school in Delaware? But as Supervisor Sheehy reminds us, domestic violence is at the kernel of so many of these dangerous mass shootings and taking out entire families around the country. This weekend in Brooklyn, a family was shot and killed. 4 members of a family, including young Lele Briggs. She was 1 year old. There had been 15 calls of domestic violence to this household. The gun was still in the home. The perpetrator of the domestic violence took out 4 of his family members, including 1-year-old Lele. We do not want this to happen in San Francisco. We have taken every possible effort in all of our careers here to make sure that this happens. We must take guns out of the hands of felons, abusers, stalkers, rapists. Perhaps getting a gun out of the house in Brooklyn would have saved little Lele's life. Is this perfect? No, it's just a first step. We still have more work to do. We hope to see other programs this year in the Sheriff's Department and other departments, but it is a first step. It's a first step towards safety and healing, and as Chief Karen said, safety for all. We're hopeful. I'm hopeful, and I hope you're hopeful too. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Beverly. You are certainly a champion for victims' rights throughout this city and beyond, and we certainly do appreciate your efforts. You know, as stated over and over today, Proposition 63 is a historic and unprecedented step forward for gun safety in California. This really is an effort to bring agencies together to ensure the safety of the residents of this jurisdiction, and we are certainly proud to be part of that. Since the implementation of this new mandate, the Adult Probation Department has received in excess of 300 referrals from the Superior Court for investigation into these matters. The stories are horrific. We see all kinds of people come through the department, all kinds of people who are referred, and it is so critically important that we work together to identify where individuals have legal weapons and illegal weapons in their possession that are going to result in crimes and death. We support and applaud the support that we have from our Board of Supervisors and from our criminal justice agencies. Each of them has been a viable partner in making this proposition a reality in terms of how we can implement and save lives. The Adult Probation Department is very pleased to partner in this process of removing guns from prohibited persons, and we look forward to the continued collaboration with the San Francisco Police Department and the San Francisco Sheriff's Department, as well as the board and Mayor Farrell in making this effort a true reality for individuals. We thank you for attending today to support the city's efforts in this initiative, and we certainly at the close of this press conference will be open to questions. So again, thank you so much for being here and supporting the effort, and we look forward to the collaboration in the future. Thank you.